After watching my How to Write video, you've officially decided that you're going to write your very own book. But before you actually put the pen to the paper, you need to learn how to structure your novel. By structuring your novel, you're basically organizing your plot points into condensed sections that will make the actual writing portion go much smoother. If you'd like to learn exactly how to structure your novel, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Be sure and give this video a big thumbs up if you are enjoying writing videos. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button so you'll never miss any more of my videos. And make sure you turn on that bell icon so that way you'll get notified whenever I post a new video. So, without further ado, let's get on with the video. When it comes to structuring your novel, there are 9 checkpoints that you gotta make sure that you have. These include the hook, backstory, the trigger, the crisis, struggle, epiphany, the plan, the climax, and the ending. I'm going to tell you exactly what all those are and why exactly you need them in your novel. So to start off is, of course, the hook. This is a sentence or a group of sentences that is placed at the very beginning of your work. Its job is typically to just dump us readers into the middle of some interesting action. It draws your audience into reading more of your work by mainly sparking their curiosity. It occurs in the opening of your story. That way it will grab your readers' full and undivided attention that will make them want to keep on reading. Think of a fisherman using a shiny lure to get a fish onto his hook. You're luring the readers into reading your novel. The next part is the backstory. It sounds exactly like it is. It refers to the history of the characters and other story elements that underlie the situation, and it also occurs in the beginning of the story, after your hook. It establishes the setting in your novel, and it makes the reader care more about what actually happens to the characters. Think of backstory equals backwards. The backstory takes the story backwards, because you need to include some history in your novel so that way your readers get a clear idea of what exactly is going to be happening later on in your book. The main job of the backstory is to reveal important information about your main characters, and it helps depict a realized story world. It helps deliver a real world going on in the whole plot of your book. The third checkpoint is the trigger, which is also known as the inciting incident. It marks the beginning of internal or external conflicts. It is the specific event that's really going to throw the character into crisis. You got your hook, you got your backstory, and it's your story's just going okay, and then here comes the inciting incident, the trigger, which something happens that makes your character realize, oh no, what's going on? They realize, oh no, like they get kind of the kind of moment, because there's this little thing that triggers them into thinking we have a problem. It tells an incident or event that the reader feels will spark a chain of events, because it helps make the reader feel that the story has actually really started. You threw your conflict out there in the plot, And now the reader is like, okay, this is getting good. It launches the story by setting it in motion. It is the plot point that draws that main character into the conflict of the story. This occurs during the first couple chapters of your story, which is equivalent to the first 10% of your story. So in other words, the first 10% of your story is the trigger, also known as the inciting incident. The next one is the crisis. This is an internal moment in the story. In other words, it means decision or dilemma. It's known as the do or die moment, because it gives the protagonist a last chance to gather all their strength, ingenuity, resourcefulness, and courage to finally defeat the opposing forces. It is the point in the story when the conflict actually reaches its highest tension and it must be solved. It's where the character realizes, oh no, I gotta do something. They realize what exactly they have to do, and they have to do everything they can to resolve the problem. After you got the crisis, next comes the struggle. The conflict reached the highest point and the character knows exactly what they need to do in order to resolve the conflict, but then they begin to struggle. Character is struggling with whatever the situation is that they're there to handle. This is known as the conflict in a story that occurs between the two opposing forces. So in other words, the main character and the opposing force are going at each other. The struggle creates and drives the plot forward. Think of this. If there's no conflict for the main character to overcome, then you don't have a story. Every story has some sort of conflict. The struggle is the most important element in your plot. Next comes the epiphany. This is a brief internal moment in which the character realizes that they have a flaw. And if you remember in my last video, nobody's perfect. Everybody has a flaw. So, of course, the main character is gonna have a flaw and they're gonna realize, oh no, this is getting in the way of defeating the opposing force. The character experiences a sudden realization that changes their understanding. So they realize that their flaws getting in the way, and it is changing their understanding of what they need to get done. The job of the epiphany is to point out a turning point for the character later on in the plot. This is known as the aha moment. It often changes the direction of the plot, and it serves to bring awareness to the character as they begin to see a certain issue in the new light. Going back to the aha moment, that's when, as the character is struggling during the conflict between the opposing force, they get the aha moment like, oh no, what am I gonna do? Because there is this one little thing known as the character's flaw that comes in the middle of the struggle of the conflict. And they start to rethink their thoughts on am I going to be able to defeat them? And this is when they need to realize that they need to just put the flaw to the side, overcome it, and fight. If that makes any sense. Next comes the plan. And this is when the character finally becomes active and starts to be able to try to solve their problems. That is just exactly what I just said. It's when the character just realizes, I don't have time for this. I need to just put that little problem to the side and figure out ways that I can still solve this problem without that getting in the way. Then comes the climax. This is the most exciting plot point. Because it is typically where the protagonist defeats the antagonist. This is the most intense point in the development or resolution of something that is in your book. The main problem of the story is officially faced and solved by the protagonist. The climax is the most dramatic event of the story because it has the greatest amount of drama, action, movement. It is where the value of your story is tested to its highest degree. The climax is the peak point where all the preceding plot developments have been leading up to. So all your previous points are leading up to the climax. Now it's time to end it. So in other words, you're to the last checkpoint of the structuring of your novel, which is known as the ending. This is typically a relative short part of your work because of the dramatic tension has just evaporated when it occurred in the climax. So the ending is known as the resolution of the story, and it occurs after the climax. This is when you learn exactly what happens to the characters after the conflict is resolved. So, because the main problem is worked out and it offers the reader a final confrontation between the struggling forces. The ending is when you put all the events and characters into one stable situation, which ends the tension of your story, which of course ends your entire novel. So those are all of the nine checkpoints that you need to remember when structuring your novel. I hope that you find this video helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, be sure and give it a big thumbs up if you did and you want to see more writing related videos here on my channel. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button so you'll never miss any more of my videos. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!